social media started before the end of your career, right?
Yeah.
So how did you see that change the criminal element?
A lot. Well, that's a good way to find them interacting.
Okay.
It's a good way to drum up evidence.
Right.
And we had our dummy pages at MySpace when MySpace was a thing.
Old school.
When Facebook first started, the information people will put out on Facebook.
Sometimes you would open a Facebook and be amazed at the person you were searching.
We had a homicide.
Okay,
once.
let's go.
Okay.
I have a treat for you today, guys. I have been trying to get an officer or a cop to come on this channel ever since I started this channel. And today I finally made it happen. So today we're going to talk to a cop that worked in New York City. He was on a jump out crew in the days of Nancy and Ronald Reagan. He worked against gangs like MS-13. We talk about things like the internet changing the course of how criminal activity is done and sometimes how they actually look for you. So without further ado, let's get started today on chopping it up.
So thanks for coming, bro. I appreciate you making the trip, right? You said traffic wasn't bad. That's always a good thing.
Good ride.
Nice. So first of all, you're here because you're an officer, right? You used to be a cop.
Yes, long time ago.
That's what I want to talk about the most. I want to get your insight versus our insight, because most of my people that watch the channel, we're addicts, we're ex-criminals, we've been to prison, we're kind of rebuilding our lives after that, right?
Right.
So what made you want to become a cop? What was the first thing when you knew you wanted to be an officer, and why?
Nothing. I backed into it. So I grew up in New York City, civil servants all around me. I didn't go to college, so it was like take every civil service exam that comes along. So I took every civil service test. Me and the guys I work with would always be taking these tests. U.S. Park Police hired me. It offered more money than what I was making. It gave me an opportunity to maybe get out of the New York area, which is one of the things I wanted to do in life. I never thought, if you asked me at 19, if you said, hey, a year and a half from now you're going to be in a police academy, I was, there ain't no way that's happening, right?
Okay.
But it did. I wasn't opposed to going into law enforcement, but I kind of did it purely for selfish reasons. Because what I envisioned, what they told us when we took the test, they said, oh, well, you get this under your belt, you can go anywhere. You can get any federal job. And so I was thinking, oh, man, I'm going to be a park ranger in Montana or something.
Okay.
Then you get there after a year or so, you realize that it's not going to happen. And you are where you are. And then, I wake up 10 years later, I'm like, I'm still in New York City.
So as a youngster, was your father in the house? Let me ask that. Did you have you had a good parental setup?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's very important to actually have goals. You know what I mean? Because I feel like the men in our lives are kind of the ones that set us to task, right?
Yes, very much.
And he wasn't in the office, or he wasn't in any kind of...
My father was a bus mechanic for the New York City Transit Authority. Okay. He was a real car guy.
Okay.
Just hard working. He was older, so he's like a more depression era sort of kid. Grew up poor. And this kind of work ethic was instilled in you.
Right, made you go to school, made you take out the trash, that type of stuff.
That kind of stuff, yeah. And, he was, I don't want to say he was hard. He wasn't really a hard disciplinarian or anything, but he let you know what's what.
Right.
And he was always like the grumpy guy. My friends were always scared of him and everything.
Okay. How about criminal stuff when you were younger? Did you get in any trouble when you were young? Was that a part of it?
No, I never really got my biggest thing was I cut out of school all the time, man. I barely went to high school.
So that's where it started for me as well.
Yeah.
Ninth grade was the end for me.
I could have, I got a good friend of mine, a guy I grew up with, I'm still good friends with. And he's told me once, he goes, man, you had this way of stepping right to the edge and then stepping back.
Damn, I wouldn't know what that's like.
Yeah.
Step right over, bro.
I don't know if that was my parents' influence. What I like to think, my grandmother died, the one I was very close with, when I was in about 8th grade. And I'd find myself effing up in high school. I experimented with a lot of different things. I ran with a lot of different crowds, some of which were into criminal activity. And I'd always think of her, and I'd always be like, man, she'd be so pissed at me, And I think that's what kept me from doing stuff a lot.
Nice.
You know, because at that time, 17, 18, I played in a heavy metal band. I'm cutting out of school every day. I'm drinking. That was our big thing, really, was drinking more than anything else. And, I didn't give a damn about the future at that point.
Who does, right?
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that. So, I don't know. I was just, I guess, I don't know if I doubt I had any level of common sense at that point, but
Right.
I don't know. But I also had friends, like the guy I just mentioned. He was kind of a straight. He drank a bit and stuff, but he never got in trouble, and he was always in the band. Also, kind of in some ways kept me out of trouble because instead of out roaming the streets, we were jamming. Like my band usually practiced in my basement, and my mother always said, "Well, at least I know who you kids are."
Right.
No, she didn't realize everyone was running behind the pools, toking up, and we were sitting with our bottles of blackberry brandy stashed in our amps.
She would probably still rather you did it at home than somewhere out in trouble,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
But we wanted the streets. We'd hang out, drink beer, and whatever. The cops would chase us every now and then. I was lucky enough never to get caught, and it was all fun and games.
And all this is in New York. What part of New York?
Staten Island, New York,
Okay,
the south shore of Staten Island, which technically is New York City, but it's much more like we didn't have big apartment buildings or anything. It was like small single family houses.
Okay.
It was an older community, and we still had a lot of woods. I spent a lot of my childhood roaming the woods there, going in abandoned houses. We had abandoned shipyards everywhere, all around the coast.
I could relate up to that point. The shipyards would be cool, though.
Yeah, it was awesome. They had been abandoned for years, and we'd wander the old ships and the old shipyards and everything. And
that'd be cool.
it was neat, it was cool. So somehow I managed, maybe through sheer luck, not to go down that one road I easily could have.
Right, and those are like, kind of harmless things for the most part too. I kind of did a lot of that, but then it got into the stuff that wasn't so harmless. So then you become a cop. Like, are you working the streets of New York? Are you in the same area, or are you in the city of New York? Like you said, park ranger too. What's the difference between the park police and the regular police?
We both work for the National Park Service. In general, the U.S. Park Police deal with urban areas, New York City, Washington, D.C., and San Francisco.
Okay.
Park rangers are more in the parks.
Okay.
And in different areas. And there's other varying, there's things that are different. The whole attitude about it is different. We act more like an urban police officer would, where they're much more, not like they're much more into the rural thing or into the, we don't really want to arrest anybody. Yeah, we want everything to be peaceful, and we weren't always like that. So I got through the academy. I spent a month or two in Washington, D.C. training in the districts there. Went back to the New York field office because my girlfriend at the time talked me into going back to New York.
Okay.
And so we worked in a place called Gateway National Recreation Area, which is, we have sites in Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, the Rockaway Peninsula. Later on, we ended up replacing rangers at the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island, so we had to start working out there. And yeah, it was, at first I worked mainly Brooklyn and Queens, the areas we had there. And you patrol your beat.
Okay, so you're in a black and white,
blue and white.
Okay.
Right,
well, black and white cars, I never some blue cars, I can't remember.
The park police, we had white cars with blue stripes down the side.
Okay.
I think they changed that now.
Yeah, they've changed it so many times, right?
Yeah, but that was it. Before I was there, the cars were green. I think we still had an old green car there when I got there.
That was when the big trunks. And
all that. I was driving those old Chevy Caprices, those big giant things.
Right.
And you patrol. But, I spent, I don't know, not even 2 years in patrol before I ended up working plainclothes.
Okay.
And over the years, I kind of drifted in and out of uniform.
Plainclothes meaning?
We were basically a drug jump out squad.
Okay.
Because this is the era of Reagan, right?
Okay.
Ronald Reagan.
What year would you say?
I came on a job in 87, so this would have been 88.
Perfect.
It's the end of Ronald Reagan's presidency.
I remember writing 1988 on some of my school papers in middle school, probably.
Yeah. Well, that's when the war on drugs really
Right,
got
because
going.
Nancy Reagan was the one that was big on that.
There's a lot of money flying around for the war on drugs. So they funded, in my office, we were a small office, we were like 60 people.
Okay.
So they funded a narcotics squad, which consisted of me, my partner, our sergeant. We had a secretary who did the paperwork stuff. And then sometimes during the busy season, summertime, we would bring in a couple guys on overtime. We basically a jump out squad. We'd wander our areas looking for people using,
Okay.
mainly. We didn't get a lot of dealers. And you bringing these people in, I mean, it was everywhere. And they wanted stats. They wanted drug stats. And we were good at it. So that's what we did. We had some areas, a big crowded parking lot, like park areas. You go down there at night. I would get the paddy wagon. I'd say, sit outside the park. We're going to fill it up, and that's what we do. Now, since we were federal, I guess it depends how you look at it, but they had made a decision that minor possession of narcotics is $100 fine. You do get fingerprinted and photographed. If you pay the ticket, that's a guilty plea and it's a misdemeanor. So you now have a misdemeanor conviction. But you didn't have to go to court. You didn't have to spend the night in jail if you didn't want to. Right? So we could just it was like just a factory line of people every night.
And then when those people came back and it was the second or third time that they had been through that same thing, how did that work?
Didn't matter.
It was the same release, $100.
Yeah, it didn't really matter. The only thing that would jam them up is if we got you a second or third time and you hadn't done anything about the last one, now there's a bench warrant, which means you go down to the federal lockup.
Okay, you're sitting in there waiting to go to see the judge now.
And we always had the option of charging you under state law, which meant you went to New York City Central Booking, you had to go out to Rikers, you had to wait to have a hearing, which at that time the system was so gummed up, it could be days. So then if it was minor drugs, you get time served and
I had a buddy that ended up in Rikers when they were 17. They went up there and his buddy shot a cop car with a BB gun out of a hotel window.
Nice.
And they locked both of them up. 17 years old, scared to death, Rikers Island.
Yeah, that's a rough place.
I'm trying to get him to come on and tell a story, but he's a bit long-winded.
Yeah, no, that's a rough place.
Yeah.
And it was overcrowded. It was always overcrowded. And
so like now you see, I'm sure you've seen videos of what the streets look like now as far as Kensington and places like this. Like, what do you think of that? Like, if you would have seen that then, you would have filled up 10 paddy wagons, right?
Yeah. If we would, if we were doing that, like the drug jump out stuff.
Right. And now they just let it happen. Like,
yeah.
What do you feel like it's better now letting it happen, or was it better then? Like, did you see people actually, get better? Did you see the same people all the time?
We didn't see the same people all the time. Like, our areas are very transitory, So, people might know, let's go down to the pier and get high. Well, they're getting high somewhere else all the time in their friends' houses or whatever. So we got some repeaters, but not that many. Sometimes I wouldn't even recognize them. It's like, oh, we got this guy a year ago. I wouldn't come up on his record, because there'd be so many of them.
So was there any time, was there any of them that you came across and you're like, man, this person doesn't need a pair of handcuffs as much as he needs some help?
Yeah, all the time.
Right.
All the time. But what am I going to do about that?
So when they got into the system, like they're in jail or whatever and they're just released, are they offering them any kind of help? Are they saying...
At that time, I don't know if they were or if they weren't.
Right, they just wanted to know how many people were using and try to stop them by giving them a fine.
I don't even think it was about stopping them, man.
Okay.
It was just, there's so much money.
Okay.
Departments are being funded so much by that. So they wanted their numbers, they wanted their stats, and
so they had no intention of helping at all, you feel like?
Not that I ever got the impression of, and treatment was very much voluntary.
It still is, but
yeah, you can't force anybody into treatment.
Facts.
So that we were not equipped to even make that offer to anybody. Now there were people that I would let go. People that especially, I don't want to offend anybody. But,
Right. Well, tell me about one of them times. Like,
okay, well, heroin people, for instance.
Okay.
First of all, when you got a guy that's been a heroin addict for so long, they're not pleasant to deal with as far as their physical thing. And at the time in New York, we had TB outbreaks. AIDS was a big thing. You didn't really want to deal. And like, I don't want this guy bleeding on me. I don't want him coughing on me.
Right.
There was times we had to, if we arrested somebody, we had to drive around with a mask and gloves because TB was rampant in that community. You know, so sometimes you'd be like, nah, dude, just go get help, man. I'm not. And
right, you kind of drawing a line there, right? It's like, man, what can I do here for this guy? You're literally pooping on yourself, not taking a shower.
Yeah, and sometimes I try to refer them to maybe a shelter or something like that. Which sometimes they want to go, sometimes they wouldn't. I've driven people to them, and it's your choice. You can go in or not, you know. But yeah, you know, and the other thing with I noticed heroin addicts. Like, I had a guy that actually, I arrested him, and he called me from jail. He ended up calling me, and his name was Mickey. And I remember this because it's the first time I came this close to killing somebody. Because he made I'm going to give away a trade secret. We drive around these parking lots, and everyone's faced in because they're looking at the water because it's on a bay. You see a couple dudes backed in, they're up to no good. So you keep your eye on them.
Because they're watching to see who's coming in.
Yeah, because they're probably shooting up or smoking crack or whatever they're doing. They're trying to see when a patrol car comes in, right? So I don't know why I remember this so well, but I'm driving, just cruising through, and these two guys are sitting there. One guy, you know, like maybe our age, another guy older. And this guy, I drive by, and he lifts a carton of milk, and he goes like this. And I always found, like, for some reason, they love to drink milk. They always had cartons of milk.
Really?
So I was like, oh, man. I said, I got to get out and talk to these guys. So I did, and sure enough, you know, you see like the needle cap lay in there, you see the tin there, you see all that there. And I was like, you guys are going to have to get out of the car, right? He gets out of the car, he has a needle with the plunger back, and he came at me like this.
No way.
And at the time, we carried a revolver still. So I had this Smith & Wesson Model 10. And he's coming at me with this. It all happened real quick, but he comes at me like this, and I took out the gun, and I just bashed him in the forehead with it. And he kind of fell back, and he dropped to me. He took off running. And I went running after him, because now I'm pissed. Right? So now I'm pissed, and I'm running after him. He's like a little guy. And the old man, he's outside the car, and I'll never forget him. He's yelling, Mickey, no! Mickey, don't do it! Mickey, don't do it! So anyway, me and Mickey get in a little scrap, bring him in, you know, arrest him. He's out like a day or two later. You know, they wanted to charge him with attempted assault on a police officer, but the reality of that is, unless you get hurt, they're not going to charge you with that, right? So got him for the drugs. He did his, like, whatever. He went to Rikers, he got out, A few weeks later, they catch him in an old airfield that's under our jurisdiction. He had pulled the copper flashing off the old airplane hangars, and he's got this little red car, and he's trying to drive off this field. It's only one way in, one way out, with a security guard at the door. And they call it and go, hey, this car just drove out of here, and he's got like 20 feet of copper. And that was Mickey. So, you know, we arrest him again, and I got him in my patrol car, and I was like, you know, man, you know, I could have shot your ass the other day and everything, and I was trying to be a tough guy. And he goes, man, I wish you did. I wish you did. And I was like, you know, Mickey, you take all the fun out of trying to be intimidating.
Right.
But, you know, point is, he's just sad, man. He's just, and I noticed that with heroin. They're just, like, they're giving up. They're sad.
Yeah.
They're depressed.
Yeah.
They have no hope. I mean, I'm like, how much more are we going to do to this person, you know? Not that I never arrested people for heroin. I did, you know.
Best thing you could do for them is get them somewhere where they got a detox, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's a horrible thing to go through, but it is the best thing that can happen for them. And now the heroin's not even a thing. It's all fentanyl. You know what I mean? It's
which I never experienced that.
Right. And it's just basically the same thing, but it goes away faster, you know.
Right.
And now they mix it with so much stuff that it's literally eating their skin off.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. No, I'm glad I'm not in that business anymore.
Yeah,
You
me
know,
too.
What I
Both
was
sides.
when I was doing it, it was cocaine, crack, heroin. Meth hadn't even come around yet. They always talked about it, so meth's going to be a big problem. In my time in narcotics, I never saw it. You know, even like later on when I was a detective in the major crimes unit, I didn't deal with drugs a whole lot, but I never saw it. But then I hear later on, after I'm gone, it's like, wow, meth's everywhere, man. And now it's fentanyl. You know, I mean, we had PCP was fun.
I bet you had some crazy ones with that.
Oh yeah,
right?
dealing with PCP people.
Yeah.
That was
What do they
always
call
fun.
it? Getting wet.
Yeah, that's one of it. You know, well, our issue was they'd come down to Washington D.C. They'd buy a little vanilla extract bottle of PCP. They got ripped off all the time. The kids who drive down from the Baltimore area, and they'd buy it in D.C. and to make sure it's real, they do what's called a dipper. Right? They dip a cigarette in. They light it, they get high as hell, and they try to drive back to Baltimore, and it was fun and games, all for a long time on that
Can't
highway.
even
Man.
see, man.
You know, you end up fighting with them, and
You
then
can't even see. I mean, no way they're going to go down that road straight, right?
no,
You
they
can't
crash.
even focus on things.
They crash you all the time. You know, we had another guy. You know, they tend to like to take their clothes off.
Mm-hmm.
We had another guy that would come
Getting
in.
butt naked, they call that one, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, he'd come in to an intersection in the park naked, and he'd like to direct traffic.
No way.
Yeah, and
How long would that last?
he'd be there an hour or two, and then he'd wander off. But, you know, the mistake they made a couple times, they would try to do something about it, right?
Oh, yeah, right. Just let him go.
And next thing you know, this guy's tossing them over the top of their police cars, and they're fighting them. And then finally they learned, wait, maybe we'll just sit back and watch. We'll let him direct traffic for a while, and then he'll wander away.
Right, get a
And
camera or something and record it. Just make sure you don't hurt nobody.
Exactly, because I've had to fight people on PCP. Man, it's like impossible.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
What I was told later on, if you throw a blanket over them, take away that sense, they'll calm down. I've seen it work. I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but they say if you remove the sense of sight, that'll usually at least disorient them enough that you can kind of get them under control. But yeah, that was.
I had a couple experiences with that stuff when I was young. Probably 3 times I used it. It's definitely, you separate from reality.
Yeah.
It's not reality that's going on around you. It's
Yeah.
totally crazy. Yeah, I got let me see here what I got as far as questions here to remind me of a few things I was thinking of. Oh, gotta know this question. Donuts. Donuts and cops. Is it a thing? Is it not a thing? Does like the department buy donuts? Like what's going on there?
It's not a thing anymore
Okay.
because I know the younger cops are all very
Right.
health conscious.
Okay.
They'd like to stay in shape. You know, not like us guys who would sit around and just get fat and didn't care. I always heard the donut thing came because Dunkin' Donuts was open 24/7. It was one of the only places open 24/7.
How long has Dunkin' Donuts been around?
As long as I can remember.
No shit.
Yeah. And Dunkin' was very big in New York.
Okay.
And, you know, so it's only, you want a snack at 2 in the morning, you go to Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
You know?
And then I guess movies kind of took it too, right?
Yeah.
Because if you look at like some old Mel Gibson movies from the 80s, what are they doing? They're sitting there eating donuts, smoking cigarettes at the desk,
Yeah.
you know, with a pile of paperwork.
Yeah. Well, you know, every now and then, you know, a guy would come in with a dozen donuts. Down here it was Krispy Kreme. Everyone loved
Okay.
Krispy Kreme. I didn't like I was like, I'm used to Dunkin', man.
Where's Dunkin'?
I wanted the Dunkin' coffee, the Dunkin',
Right.
the Dunkin', you know. So yeah, that would happen. But it's I think that's an overblown.
Yeah, and I guess it's also like a date thing too, right? Because it might have been a thing back then. It's not as much now.
Yeah, well, like I said, back then it was the only place open, and back then, you know, like I said, well, I don't think we and the guys that came before me were as health conscious as the newer guys are.
And I guess that's some, you know, goes with some, you know, just thinking about COs in jail, for example, where I've seen masses of them. Some of them, like, could not help you if they had to because they're so overweight. And some of them are, you know, you can tell they're in the gym every day.
Yeah.
So that's back to individuals again, too,
Yeah.
right choices. But yeah, I just always thought that was funny because cop thing is just hell, I even do videos where I say we're going to have our coffee and donuts while we watch this video just because it's a thing, right?
Yeah.
So I just figured I'd ask that. Okay, so in any kind of job, there's firsts. You know what I'm saying? Like baby's first steps, even things like that. What was like one of the first that it stands out to you? First time this happened, first time that happened on the job.
Well, what I told you about that guy Mickey, that's the first time anyone actually physically attacked me, I believe. It was a lot of when I was in Washington. I was brand new. I did my first month here or so, and we rotated through the districts. And I remember riding the B&W Parkway, so it was like maybe the first chase. I remember a lot about it. It didn't last long. I wasn't driving. You know, I was in a lot more hellacious chases after that. But it was that, and it was, I think, the first time we went up into Greenbelt Park in PG County, and I was with this guy who was like the drug officer of the year, and he was kind of jacking people up in the campground for drugs, you know, and he was like, search this, search that. It's the first time I was really searching people for real, searching properties for real, searching cars for real. I don't know, I mean, you'd have to ask, like, you'd have to ask me. I mean, it's all first,
Right.
You know?
Yeah, but I guess my question too is like after a while it becomes normalcy. You kind of get used to doing something after 100 times, but the first time it might be a little different.
Well, you're always the first traffic stop.
Right.
The first 100 traffic stops, you're like,
right,
because they put stuff in your head in training where it's all going to go bad. You're going to end up in a terrible shootout and all that kind of stuff. And then after 100 of those, you're like, man, you don't think it's never going to happen, but you relax a bit more about it.
So that's an interesting point. Do you think that has anything to do with some of the police violence that's been going around? You know what I mean? And I think it's because it's more reported on than not. But like maybe they're approaching the car with that mindset that it's going to be so bad because that's what they're taught, or no?
Let me tell you what I experienced towards the end of my career. This is my experience, okay? When I started, we had this thing, it was like, green, yellow, red, like you're supposed to operate in the yellow. Okay. Like, you know, be aware of what's going on around you. Red is when it all went bad. Now you have tunnel vision and you have, you know, it's just all, you're reverting to your training and all that. Green is somewhere you should never be. Green is when you're sleeping. Okay. And that was it. And it was like, okay, you know, they put you in different scenarios and for training purposes and stuff like that. What I saw it evolve into towards the end of my career, I would go to these training, like mandatory training classes. And instead of saying, well, okay, you go in a room. This is a subtle difference, but you go in a room and there's two guys and his grandma in her wheelchair. These two guys are going to be probably, they would be your threat, right? So you keep an eye on them, always watch the hands, you know, things like that. You know, be aware of what's going on around you. Okay. I literally heard towards the end of training, Grandma's going to pull that gun. Grandma's going to shoot you. Grandma's going to kill you. And I'm like, it went like, you know, I literally had a guy tell me once, tell the whole class once, he goes, you know, when you get in a fight out there, first guy that brings me somebody else's eyeball gets free ice cream. You know, and I was like, wow, this is, I watch kids go out on the street terrified. You can't be terrified.
Right.
You can't be, you know? And a lot of it is also generational. I mean, there's a lot of younger guys, they came on the job, they've never been in a fight. They don't know what it's like to get punched. And they've never been in the communities that they're policing. And that breeds fear. And fear breeds very bad decisions.
All the way around too, right? Because the community is scared of some foreigner. Yeah. Somebody they don't know versus somebody they might have possibly known to grow up in the community. Yeah.
So you kind of, you know, if you put these new guys out there, you kind of got to keep an eye on them and make sure, like, if it was me, I'd be like, hey, man, you know, relax. You know, it's no reason to get all, you know, because most people, even hardened criminals, are not going to try to kill you. Now, you have to be prepared if they do. But you can't go in there with, this guy's going to try to kill me. This guy's going to try to kill me. Of course not. Everyone out here wants to kill me. You can't drive around like that, man, because then bad things happen. That's just a change I saw that came along.
Right.
You know? And I didn't think it was a good change. So, yeah, does that answer
yeah, it kind of does, man. So how many times on your force did you find that addiction played a role in the crimes and stuff like that? Like, I know you said the jump out crew, but like, I know you also said something about working with MS-13.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
Like, in your experience, like, what does that have to do? Are there those two things together? What are they doing? Are they selling the drugs? Are they doing the drugs? Why are they joining the gangs?
Well, they join the gang for the same reasons everyone else does. You know, they want to belong to something.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them come from broken homes. You know, they're strangers in a community. You know, even like a lot of them came direct from, like, say, El Salvador, which is the main place they came from.
Mm-hmm.
They're very transient. They move around a lot. So if you're a member of MS-13 in Arlington, Virginia, you can move out to Los Angeles or to Dallas or anywhere else and fall right in with MS-13,
right.
You know? And so, yeah, a lot of it is they want to belong. They want to belong to the toughest gang in the community. You know, it protects them. As far as drugs goes, yeah, they sold. Not in any great quantities that I ever saw.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there might have been an undercurrent of very organized crime amongst the older guys, but the younger guys I encountered, and this is like in 2003 to 2005, 6, 7, whenever that was, they were very much about mayhem, creating mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they love stolen cars, they love stealing cars, and they drive them up to New Jersey and sell them in the port and whatnot. They had connections there. But these are young guys. These, you know, 16, 17, 18-year-old guys. The OGs, the old guys, you never really saw them or ran into them. What would get these guys in trouble was the crazy crap they did. You know, they would commit murders. They would commit assaults. They would commit rapes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what would really jam them up, you know? So drugs were a part of it. I don't think a gigantic part. That may be different now, too, though.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're still out there.
Yeah, the gangs I think, it's more about family than it is anything, right? Because, you know, you get jumped in or joined into this gang, whatever, and some of them dudes will die for you.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll die for them, and it's like, that's kind of what they teach you too, right?
Yeah.
It's all about loyalty. You stand up for your brother, right or wrong, no
Absolutely.
matter what. And then they're out doing wrong, and the next guy's saying, F you, we're going to keep doing wrong and punch you in the face for doing wrong.
Yeah. What I did notice, like, you round these guys up, about 10% of them are true believers.
Mm-hmm.
The other 90% are kind of hangers-on.
Mm-hmm.
And you could usually get them to talk as a cop.
Mm-hmm.
When they're looking at, you know, jail, deportation, something like that, a lot of them will talk, you know, despite what the penalty of that might be.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them did pay that penalty for talking along the way.
Right.
You know?
There's a choice there, right? You either...
But I did run into plenty of true believers that they weren't saying that they'd rather go to jail, and some of them did for the rest of their life, rather than say a word about anything, you know? Mm. In a weird way, I remember telling one of them, he sat there, I knew he was in on this murder, and I was like, you know, in a certain way, I kind of respect that,
right.
I guess, you know? But, yeah, but they were about creating mayhem, about doing violent, nasty things, and, but yes, very much about the brotherhood, the family, sticking together, yeah. You know, the original question about addiction, yeah, that plays a big role in those people commit crimes to support their habits.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I did. That's every crime I have was something to do with that.
Yeah.
I didn't commit a single crime that wasn't to support my habit in some way. And if it wasn't to support the habit because it was to buy gas or something, it's because I already spent money on my habit.
Yeah, it always boils back down
it's
to
always
that.
bad. I would have had plenty of everything if I wouldn't have been using, for sure.
You know, I think just about every criminal case I ever worked, there was an angle where drugs were involved. Mm-hmm. Maybe not necessarily addiction, but it was always something. Mm-hmm. Drugs came into it somehow.
Because it's easier to manipulate the person using?
Yeah, maybe. You know, but it's like it could be any kind of case.
It's definitely easier to pull that addiction string versus someone who doesn't have that dependency, right?
Yeah.
And if you tell them you're going to let them go home and use again, if they just give you some information,
that works.
It's going to be quick.
Yeah, that works. you know. But they still lie.
Right.
they lie. Everybody lies. Man.
Yeah, true.
They lie like crazy.
Yeah.
You know. So it's one of those, you know, trust but verify, or you're lying right to my face, man.
Right.
I mean, you lie ain't even making any sense. Come on.
I used to be good at lying, man. I was
Yeah.
good at it. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I turned off for myself. I was like, I just don't want to be a dishonest person,
Yeah.
period. And I have trouble lying now. Like my buddies
Yeah.
or somebody wants me to hang up or cover up for them or something, and they want me to lie. I'm like, bro, I don't want to do that. Like I don't. It's not who I want to be at this time in my life. You know, 10
Right.
years ago was something else. I'd be like, hell yeah, he was with me the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to be that person, man. Yeah,
No, you're like me and you get caught in every bad thing you've ever done.
pretty much.
You learn not to lie.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know? But, you know,
Yeah.
people have all kinds of motivations, especially to lie to the police. I mean, I've witnesses lie,
yeah.
victims lie,
Sure.
suspects lie, you know?
Well, you're lying about everything that you know you're not supposed to be doing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Of
Yeah.
course. Like I could get pulled over right now and I know I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to tell the truth because I'm not doing anything.
Right.
But if I'm doing something wrong and I know there's a big bag of something under the seat or something, then yeah.
Hell yeah.
Right.
You
Trying
gotta,
everything to get out of it.
you got to take your shot, man.
Of course.
You got to try,
I
right?
remember one time I was in probation, and I don't know why they didn't lock me up for this, but I had a device that I was trying to pass my urine screen with, and he caught me with it. And he came out, he was like, why are you trying to do this? Da, da, da. I was like, bro, the game is you try to catch me, I try to get away. I've been playing this for 20 years. I know how
Right.
this works. It doesn't work any other way. And then for some reason, they let me go that day. But yeah, that's just kind of the game, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's part of it when you join up. If you start playing the game and you're committing crimes and using and doing all that stuff, you know what you're signing up for. Same thing
Yeah.
when you signed the paper to become a cop, you knew what you were signing up for.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It wasn't what you wanted, same as it wasn't really what I wanted, totally, but you were willing to do it, right?
Yeah. You know.
Huh.
You know, like I said, I did it because I had other motivations for doing it. You know, but I'm not saying I didn't like it. You know, it had its moments. It was good.
Sure.
It was good. It was
And there's
bad.
a camaraderie among cops too.
There
I'm
is.
sure,
I made
right?
some, you know, really good friends
Right.
along the way. You know, got to see a lot of crazy crap.
Right.
Got some stories. You know, got some probably mental illness and alcohol issues
Right.
too. You know, but yeah, I mean, it is. You know, shouldn't look back. You know, like. Because you think I'm like, man, I was in school to become an electrician when they called me for that job. Maybe I would have been better off doing that. Then again, maybe I would have electrocuted myself to death at some point. So who knows?
Right. Yeah. There's always that little road there we can look back to. There's always several forks in our lives we can look back to and say, I made this choice and I could have did this.
Yeah.
Instead of.
But you can't really regret it, and it'll drive you insane.
Yeah.
If you do.
Yeah. Well, you're never going to be able to change it. So what's the point?
Right. Exactly.
Right.
You know.
It's wasted energy.
Yeah. Exactly.
So can you remember a time when you were torn between doing your job or doing what felt right in your gut?
Yeah. Yeah. I could give you a very kind of lighthearted one, I guess. It just comes to mind.
Okay.
So we had this beach in Queens, and one end of the beach was frequented by homosexuals, lesbians, all kinds of different people, right? So there's these two women used to hang out on the beach all the time, and I think they were gay. I'm pretty sure they were. But you weren't allowed to be topless at the time. And I had a lieutenant that he goes, you need to go down and lock them up for being topless. I said, well, they're wearing pasties. He goes, well, the law says the areola has to be complete. And I was like, Jesus Christ.
What?
You know? And it wasn't really I was torn. I made a stand. I was like, I'm not writing them up.
Right.
I'm not locking them up. But he ordered. He's like, well, he goes, I'm gonna write you up if you don't. I said, all right. So I went down and said, how you doing, ladies? I said, hey, what's up, Scott? I said, you know who's making me write you a ticket? I talked him out of the arrest. I said, so if you want to go to court, I'll be a witness for you. I'll be glad to say, no, I didn't see any areola.
Right.
Because they never caused a problem. They were fine. Why mess with them like that? You know, that's kind of a real petty thing.
Nitpicking.
You know, I don't know, like between doing the right thing and like, I don't know, man. I can't really think of anything like kind of heavy duty offhand about what, you know, doing the right thing or doing my job.
And I mean, I kind of feel like it's going to come in a lot of times right there where somebody's telling you to do something that you didn't want to do, something you wasn't going to do, and they're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
what about this?"
There was a lot of procedural things about cases where I would think I should be doing this with a case, and my lieutenant's like, "I want you to do this," and I said, "Well, that's going to screw up this whole case. I don't want to do that." And it would come down to that, and either I'd have to do it or not. But I found ways of circumventing that kind of thing. Because sometimes, look, I literally had a commander that came in one time and goes, "You know something, guys? I was watching NYPD Blue last night, and it gave me a good idea." We're like, "Oh, Jesus Christ."
This is where you do your research.
Yeah, well, because that's what happens when, you put officials in charge of a department, and like I was in criminal investigations, you might put people in charge that have never conducted a criminal investigation. But now they're the captain or the major or something. And now they think they could tell you what to do. And I'm like, well, that would be utterly destructive to this case if we did that.
And they never stepped foot on the beat. They never done the job that you're doing.
They never did it.
Like, how are you going to tell me to do the job I'm doing when you've never done the fucking job?
Well, there's a lot of arrogance. There's a lot of type A's that are in police departments,
and
right?
It also makes you not want to listen to them. Like, why would you put someone in that position when who they're going to be telling to do knows they don't know what the hell they're talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's like if you did that in the army would fall apart.
Well, that's just the way the promotion process worked, Like, they would put a lieutenant in charge of the helicopters who didn't know how to fly helicopters, And it's okay if, like, I've had bosses that came in and said, "Listen, man, I've never done this, so I'm just going to follow your lead. And, here's the deal. Don't screw me. I won't screw you. Don't make me look like an idiot, and I won't come at you." And that's cool, That's fine.
At least let me know what's real, right?
Right, and then they learn as they go. And then they're in there for a while, and now they kind of catch up.
Yeah, then a year, they're like, "Well, I thought you said this right here, so that's what we're doing."
And then they know the way that things operate.
Right. Well, at least they're learning from someone instead of just coming in and trying to tell you how to do something that they don't know anything about.
Right.
When you're the experienced one.
Right. So, there was stuff like that. But as far as on the street, as a cop, you actually have quite a bit of discretion. Like when it came to, I'm going to lock this guy up or not.
Right. Well, that's kind of how you're either going to become the one cop that everybody hates because you lock up everybody, beat up everybody.
Right.
Or you're the one that'll let you go.
Right.
And it's kind of like then, it's like, are you just letting them go because you're a nice guy or because they're kind of giving you a little bit about the situation? Because kind of like what we were talking about earlier, too, is these cops never been in fights. They're working in a community that they've never been in before. But if you go in there beating them all up and you're this guy, you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
But if you come in the other way and you're kind of learning about them,
Right.
Billy's over here and Billy's mom and Timmy down the street or whatever. Like, a little bit about them and you work with them without just punishing them every time, because there's difference.
Yeah. But there's a fine line between being cool and being a bitch.
Right.
You can't let anyone do that to you.
Right.
Yeah,
well, that works the same way in prisons and stuff as
Yeah.
well. But absolutely. And especially when you're dealing with the people that are in prison. I know how they test you.
Yeah. And that was like back in the day, before my time, community policing was a big thing, especially in the city. There'd be a cop walking the beat. He knew everybody.
Right.
He knew what the vibe of the community. He knew what was going on. They knew him. And whether they I think they might still do that to a degree in New York. But everybody, they just knew everybody. So you can kind of keep it, because your job really is to keep a lid on the place. Don't let it get out of control. Like we always said, sometimes you got to let some criminals exist in order to catch the other ones. And it's kind of a balance you have to find. But that they would know, oh, this store got burglarized. Oh, I know exactly who I'm going to go talk to, because he's the guy that burglarizes everything. That doesn't exist so much. That exists so much anymore, because
I think it should. I think if you're going to have communities like that, I think if somebody's going to be boots on the ground, they should know the people around them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But people, they move around, they transfer around. Like a job like mine was very, there's certain districts you can work in where you are in a neighborhood all the time. There's others where it's very transitory, like downtown D.C. Right? Around the monuments and memorials and all that stuff. Yeah, you get to know the local homeless guys. You get to know some of the, local dudes. But for the most part, it's very, tourists.
And, times have changed so much, too, that,
our interpersonal reactions to people all the time, most of the time aren't even there like they used to be.
Yeah.
Back in the days when this worked, it was Mayberry, right?
Right.
There was no telephones, there was no communication that made it work better because nobody was just distracted by their phone. Or, you know, you might have somebody now that could be in that apartment up there and you never see them because they're on their computer 24 hours a day. They, you know, get Uber Eats delivered to them. You don't even know they're up there.
Yeah.
Back in those days, they couldn't have lived that way.
Right.
They had to come out.
Yeah. But, you know, people can live kind of anonymously now.
Yes.
You know.
Even with the digital world knowing everything about you, you can go somewhere and kind of isolate.
Yeah, you can. You know, I don't know if that's a bad thing necessarily. You know,
I think it's good and bad. I like to be by myself at times, but I know long times by yourself is never good. We all want human interaction.
Yeah.
At some place in our life, whether they're up there with that computer on, they're searching for human interaction through that computer, I think.
Well, that's one of the things I think with social media. How much of that interaction is that really human interaction?
Right.
You're not looking anyone in the eye. You're not looking at anyone's body language. Like, look at the vile crap.
Which brings me to the point that I want to thank you for coming here, because we almost did just digitally, and that was exactly how I kind of said too. Right? There's a different vibe.
No, totally.
We're in the same room. You know what I'm saying? It's a different thing.
It's worth the drive, man. Right. I would much rather do this like this.
Good.
I hate Zoom. Right. I hate all that stuff.
I've been thinking about doing it because I could talk to some people that are in LA that are just never going to be able to come here.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if I can get you here, I want you here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's definitely better.
Absolutely. It's definitely a different vibe. So with that too, how did you see, like, social media started before the end of your career, right?
Yeah.
So how did you see that change the criminal element?
A lot. Well, that's a good way to find them interacting.
Okay.
It's a good way to drum up evidence.
Right.
And we had our dummy pages at MySpace, when MySpace was a thing.
Old school.
When Facebook first started. It's the information people will put out on Facebook.
Sometimes you would open up Facebook and be amazed at the person you were searching.
We had a homicide once.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. This girl, she was murdered in Maryland and shot a bunch of times. We started looking into it and like, well, this is what we figured out happened was there was two sets of drug dealers. She was friends with one, friends with the other. She set the one group of drug dealers up to be robbed by these other guys. Okay. And they found out about it and they took her out.
Ooh.
Right? So we had a suspect. And we pull up his Facebook page and there's a picture of him with two guns that says Greenbelt Killer. Well, we might be able to get a warrant on that.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And it turned out to be him.
Yeah, it was him. Yeah.
He just announced it to the world.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, people say all kinds of crap, you know, and I've been telling my son that, man. My son, like, he's on Instagram or whatever the hell he does, and he loves to argue with everybody about sports and politics and everything. I'm like, man, first of all, that crap's gonna follow you around forever. You know, saying, well, never let him see you coming, man. Don't let him. Don't sit there and let him know exactly what you think about everything. I don't know. Maybe I'm more of a private.
So is he the same type of person that will conversate or debate that person face to face?
Oh, yes, he will, absolutely.
So he doesn't care either way.
That kid should have been a lawyer.
Okay.
You know, because he can argue even after he knows he's wrong.
Right, he just keeps going.
He'll keep going.
Right, he wants to have the last word.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
I got in a lot of trouble that way on social media. I stopped doing that.
I gave up the whole political thing very quickly on Facebook.
Yeah, me too.
Because it's
that was
pointless.
What got me in trouble. It is.
It's absolutely
in whose mind
pointless.
Are you going to change, bro?
Nobody's. And then when you involve the fact that you're a musician, the whole reason I'm on Facebook was to promote bands and music. Now I'm going to write some political crap. Now I'm alienating half the people that might be our audience, you know?
And I can't even change my daughter's mind. Like, she's my daughter.
Yeah.
I'm not going to change your mind on this computer or this telephone.
No,
it's just not going to happen.
No.
Save your time, save the negativity. Yeah. Don't put the energy into it.
Yeah.
And then you know how you
Yeah.
feel when you drop that comment, somebody retorts and they say something derogatory about you or something. Now you're back in there defending
Yeah.
yourself. And what does that do for you?
Nothing. It just aggravates
It
you.
is nothing but stress.
It ruins your day.
Nothing but anxiety.
Yeah.
Now your old
Yeah.
lady's asking you about dinner and you're like, I don't fucking care. And now you're fighting with her because of some dumb shit on Facebook.
Yeah. And then when you think about arrest, you're like, who gives a shit what this person thinks? I couldn't care
I don't even
less.
know that person.
Yeah, I couldn't care less.
Where do they live? They're in Ohio.
Yeah.
Why do I care?
Yeah, why am I even arguing
So
with
dumb.
this
It's
person?
so stupid.
You know?
The
And
same thing with the comments. Like I have people coming to the comments on some of the videos too, and it's not a lot of hate. Most time it's a lot of love because I try to push positive shit, man. But sometimes they'll just come in and say something stupid, and I can tell you watched the first 20 seconds of the
Yeah,
video.
there's
you
always
made a
that.
comment and you left.
yeah.
And it's hard for me sometimes to not give it that energy. Like
Yeah.
the other day I got one, and I went in on him, you know what I mean? And then a little bit later I was like, you know what? I just got rid of the comment. I was like, it's not even worth it. Why
Yeah.
am I stressed about it? I don't know this person.
We used to get that on the Rebel Soul page a lot. Because, you know, Kid Rock is politically very
Because you
divisive.
play music, right? We didn't talk about that at
Yeah.
all. You're a rock star.
Weekend
Nah, man,
Warrior.
y'all killed it. Y'all killed it this weekend. It was
Thank you.
awesome. It
Thank
was
you.
awesome. I got a couple of videos and stuff. I'm gonna B-roll in here. That's why I wanted to talk about it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, you know, we're Weekend Warriors. I've been at it.
Right.
I've been at this since I was a little kid, doing this stuff. You know, I've been in 10 million different bands and
Right.
all that, you know.
Right, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, well, you know, like Kid Rock is politically divisive, so you might put an event out, and there's always going to be someone coming in there to talk crap about him,
Mm-hmm.
talk crap about us for the fact that we play his music and that kind of stuff. And, you know, Mike always responds. Mike's the, you know, the leader.
Mhm.
He runs the page. He always responds, "Look, this ain't about politics. It's about having a good time, man." You know, he writes something like that and just leave it at that. You know, because what is the point?
Right, it is.
You know?
So when you follow somebody for music, let's just say you're listening to the music, do you care about their political views?
Sometimes.
Sometimes me too.
Sometimes, not always. You know, like I had the discussion with my daughter about the band Rage Against the Machine. Right? I love their music because I love that heavy stuff, and she's like, I don't really like the stuff they sing about and everything. I said, I don't like their politics, but I admire their rage. You know, they, you know, like that. You know,
'Cause I'm a big music guy. We've talked about this before.
Right.
You know, a lot of music, 205,000 minutes. You know, last year.
Mhm.
And my daughter's like, she's adapted that. She's a big
Mhm.
Spotify listener. We exchange music and listen to music a lot.
right?
And there's certain things in the music that I'll listen to too. And she's like, how do you listen to that when you don't believe in that part of it?
Right.
And I'm like, I look past it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. I also heard something from a creator. His name's Dwayne. It's on YouTube. Dry Creek Wrangler School. But he was talking about something, and he started talking about the Bible. And he's great at telling these stories.
Mhm.
But he said something about in the Bible, and he's like, all right, by the way, a lot of people go into the comments and they want to say something about the Bible. I say something about the Bible, you don't like the Bible. If you're so narrow-minded that you can't look past those couple words like the Bible to my point, then just click off.
Yeah.
You know, and that taught me a lot in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, something that's simple, you know. I also had a guy in prison named Floyd. I hated this guy, bro. Hated him, couldn't stand him, called us crackers, like it was horrible. But he stood up one time and he said, words are like bullets from a gun. You can't take them back. Once you say them, you can't take them back.
Yeah.
And that's been 20 years ago, you know what I mean? 15 years ago, whatever. And that stuck with me. Even though I couldn't stand that dude, I was able to look past his horrible character
No, he had a little bit of wisdom.
into that little bit of wisdom that he spit out there, and it stuck with me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's all good. Yeah, but you know, it's the whole social media thing. Well, you know, it's like any other creation, right? It can be used for great good. It can be used for great evil. It's usually used for great idiocy and meaningless crap most of the time.
It is.
You know, but then I have old friends who that's the only way I communicate with them.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Sure.
the only way I know what's going on in their life. And I hardly ever post anything other than music stuff, so they have no idea unless they call me. They don't know what's going on in my life.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's very hard to avoid.
Yeah.
You know, they've made it hard to avoid.
Yeah, absolutely.
By putting a computer in your pocket.
Yeah.
That can do just about anything.
No, I can't stand myself. I sit on the couch like watching TV. A commercial comes up and I'm scrolling. I'm like, what am I doing, man? You know?
Yeah, man, that comes back to dopamine, which is like the whole basis of addiction. You know, any kind of addiction is dopamine. It's the
Right.
good sensors in your body. So Same thing with that. Like, you don't even want to sit there long enough to struggle through the commercial. You want to pull out and watch TikTok. And I see people do it all the time.
Yeah.
I just don't pay. I just pay to not have commercials.
Well, there you go.
Same thing, you know what I mean? But it's still the same thing. And it's like you see people that are so overstimulated this way. We're overstimulated. Stop and turn everything off.
Yeah.
And just sit there. I've started driving in my truck with no music on.
Yeah, I do
That's
that too.
hard.
I do that
That's
too
hard,
sometimes.
right? But what do you think about it? Sometimes I think about different shit. Sometimes I'm thinking about the same stuff, regardless if the music was on or not. But like yesterday, I went home yesterday, and I sat in my room. You know, I have a den where I sit and chill, TV right there, telephone, computer. I sat there for 2 hours with nothing on, writing on a whiteboard, thinking about ideas. You know, I called Gabby, somebody I work with, you know, with this stuff. But turning all that off allows you to realize some other things, man. We're so involved with the phone. Like I've worked with guys, and we're working, and they're holding a board for me to cut it, and they're pulling out their phone.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I see
Your
that all the
job
time.
right now is to hold the board. Your phone does not matter. But he don't even think about this. He just reaches in his pocket and pulls out his phone.
Yeah, it's instinctive almost. You know, it's habitual is what it is, really. You know, but I don't do it as much because I just haven't had time. But I'm always an advocate of just shut it off, take a walk in the woods, man.
Yeah, man, you have to be aware of it. It's just like anything else in life. We have access to alcohol. You could drink alcohol 24 hours a day, or you could drink it twice a year. That's your choice.
Right.
Your telephone's the same thing.
Yeah.
What you're turning it on, how much time you're spending on it is totally your choice. But it's also an addiction that's not so easy just to put down.
Yeah. Well, it's right there, man.
Yeah.
You don't even have to go get it. It's right there.
And let's think about this for example. This is a nice analogy I've always used. Back in the old days, let's go all the way back to savagery, when we used to go hit a woman over the head, grab her by her ponytail, pour her back to the cabin. Now, first of all, we made the cabin. We got dopamine hits from making the cabin because we made a shelter. We got dopamine hits from taking the woman or whatever, making a relationship, having babies. These things gave us satisfaction. Now, all you need to do is turn on your phone. And it gives you such a similar satisfaction that you don't want to get up and do anything, because you don't need to go work to get satisfaction.
Right.
All you got to do is scroll.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's killing us, man. I think generationally it's going to be a bad thing.
It
I
could
really
be.
do.
It could be. I don't know. I hate predicting the future, man, because you never know what's coming down the pike next. You know, you
Good
just
point.
never know. So, like, it could, in the end, it could end up being it could be a great leap forward for humanity. Maybe. I don't know. You know, we're stuck in our way of thinking.
Right. Sure, because we're old school.
We're here in the real world.
I'll go with
we
that.
walk the streets. We walk in the woods. We do what we do. You know, from what I could see, these kids are plugged in all the time.
They
man.
are.
And I think maybe in a generation or two, maybe if they figure out how to get a handle on that, how to integrate that better into life. Because now, man, you got AI out there.
And with that, that's where our next point's going. We're learning it. It's such a we're learning less.
Yeah.
Human beings are learning less. We're becoming dumber because we can just go here.
Yeah.
Google, ChatGPT,
Yeah.
tell me what I need to know.
Yeah.
We don't have to think.
Well, that makes me think, you know, if the internet ever goes down, it's going to be absolutely
It's going
catastrophic.
to be hard.
That's going to be fatal for
Right.
most people. You know, when you think about how reliant we are on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, say the internet, say there's an EMP
Mm.
from an enemy or from a sunspot or whatever. Say it takes out the grid, right? Internet goes down. Even just on the East Coast of the United States.
Hell, just in your area.
That's the end of grocery deliveries.
Right.
That's the end of your communication with other people.
Mhm.
You know, that's the end of your ability to actually figure anything out, you know. That's where it could run into danger.
Right.
Because if something like that happens, it will be utterly catastrophic
For sure.
for us. Which is why us and our enemies work on ways of being able to do just that.
Mm-hmm.
Take
to
down
attack
power
it and
grids.
defend it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Take down the other guy's power grid, his GPS, whatever. And he's helpless.
Chaos.
Absolutely helpless. I know in the military, they're training for that, like, if this goes down.
Right.
If we don't have our
Right.
we need to learn land navigation.
Yeah.
They're doing that in the military. But
Should be.
how would the average person even know?
Hell, I didn't know how to
How
get
to-
around till they made GPS, bro.
You know?
I wouldn't even think about a trip to the city. I remember being 17, 18, I had to go over the mountain and find some job over there. It was fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
Now I just turn on my phone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It is very nice to be able to do that. But, I guess the point being, I think it does make us dumber. We're just learning not to have to think.
I still have map books laying around my house.
Really? You're right. Old school. Would you fold it because I just
the big fold-out ones.
Takes up the whole
and then
front
the
of the
atlas,
car.
the book.
Yeah, I remember those in my dad's truck when I was young.
Even like when I was first worked in New York at D.C. It's like, where the hell's that called?
That was how you had to get there, man.
This is how.
And it was like, take this road to this.
Yeah.
It wasn't nobody sitting there just telling you to turn left.
You plot out, this is the best way to get there, and God forbid if a street's closed or something. Right. Back to the map book. You gotta pull over. You're like, oh, let me look.
And it's like they've also noticed that, I think the worst part is the kids. We're giving it to our kids young, and then you see these kids flipping out when you take it away. They're holding it so close to their face that their vision is really bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just don't, And then where does it go from there? So, do we eventually not have it to become smarter, or do we just integrate it into our brain where we just blink our eyes to turn it on?
I think that's what's coming.
Me too.
I know. There are people working on that, and that's scary to guys like us. It would be second nature to people a few generations from now. The one thing that scares me about that kind of stuff, even the internet in general, the amount of control an entity, like say a government, can control you. That's like when they talk about digital bank currency. I'm like, that is a terrible, terrible idea, man.
You ever watch Black Mirror?
Yes.
So have you seen the new ones?
I don't know if I've seen.
So they just put a couple out. This one right here was this woman had just a quick over, but she had some kind of injury. Her brain was messed up. She was in a coma. They made a software that could bring her back. They put the software in her brain. Now she's back, but she has to pay a subscription.
Yeah.
They can barely afford the subscription. Then the subscription becomes where she plays ads. Hello, today is from hello. She just pops on and starts playing ads, and they have to upgrade to get rid of the ads.
Right.
It's like, if we ever get to that, like, if you can't just buy that hardware to put it into your body, it's a complete trap.
Yes.
If it's something like that, they would upgrade you. If they ever turn it into a subscription thing like that, that is horrifying.
Well, and we see that, like, I recently bought a new computer for the first time in like 15 years. And now I have to pay a subscription for Microsoft Office. I never had to pay a subscription. It used to just come with the computer, Now I have to pay a subscription so I can do a Word document. And
so that they can update it every couple weeks.
Yeah. And that's what's going. That's what makes it dangerous, man. The wrong people get their hands on that technology, and they already have their hands on that technology, And imagine, like, I imagine a digital bank currency where you can, you did this wrong and that wrong, and you can't buy groceries this week, or like, let's say you're someone who enjoys firearms. And they decided, we're not going to let you buy a firearm with your digital bank currency and that kind of thing,
And then the social credit scores. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, well, they do that in China and all that. Yeah.
I think that was a big part of COVID, was the whole facial recognition thing. Everybody had masks on, and they were still able. Like, I can turn my phone on now, and it'll find me with my glasses on. It'll find me when I know for a fact it's not just my face. I'm in the hood. I got all this different stuff going on. So I think that had a lot to do with that too, and I think they know a whole lot more than what you see.
I'm sure they
through
do.
The CCTV
I'm sure they do.
You know what I mean? It might even have your name up there at this point.
Our saving grace is there's so many of us, they can't possibly monitor all of us all the time, But
and I mean, I guess that's kind of the thing too. People talk about Alexas and things like that being in your house. Hell, I have 3 Alexas in my house. Because I'm not doing or saying anything in there that's illegal. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
If I just want to say, hey, order me some gloves, I can do that, and she'll order me some gloves.
Right.
Right. Or if I want to say play some music, that's how I use it.
Yeah.
I mean, your phone's listening to you all the time too. Just as much as that is.
That's pretty obvious.
Right. I wanted to do a video for a while where I plant something, where I keep saying I want something that I never want. Adult diapers.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And see if the ads start coming up on my phone trying to sell me adult diapers.
I don't know if you're the type of guy that, like, when you're driving in the car, you have conversations with yourself. You ever do that?
Sure.
And sometimes I find myself doing that. Or, the only person I argue with about politics is me. But... And then I'd be like, oh, man, listen. I look at my phone. I'm like, I hope I didn't say anything stupid.
Right.
At 20 years from now, they go, hey,
Right.
Mr. Powers, you said this in your
I
car.
remember this.
You know,
You thought you were alone.
I was mad. I didn't mean it.
So yeah, man, I guess that's about it for me, man. I don't know if you want to tap on anything
Cool.
else.
No, man. I'm good.
Was there any time you really feared for your life?
Well,
like
yeah.
other than that one time where the dude came at you with a crazy needle, because that was definitely scary.
You know what? Stuff happens.
Shootouts, things like that.
Stuff happens really fast.
Right.
So I was more of some crap would happen. You'd come through it unscathed. And a few days later, you're like, wow, that was messed up, man. You know?
Right.
I had the whole people
feel
tried
that.
to
I've
pull,
done that.
you know, people try to pull guns, knives. I had one guy try to drive away with me half in his car. You know, which was very dangerous. You get in fights with people, car chases that it's like, God damn, I don't know how we lived through that. You know, like we came so close to wrecking so many times, and somehow I came through it basically without a scratch. Some bumps and bruises from getting punched a few times.
Right.
Other than that, but it happens like really in that moment, you know, and you don't really think about it until afterwards, and then you're like, wow, that was close. You know, that was messed up.
Right. And it's kind of like you're already there with the mindset of that this needs to be dealt with, so you just do what you got to do to deal with it.
Well, sometimes you find yourself being driven away in a car half in and out, and you go, oh, that was a tactical error.
Right.
That was usually anything that happened like that, like with that guy Mickey and the needle. That was on me, man. That was my bad tactics that caused that. You know what I mean? It usually boils down to that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I did something tactically unsound and
Right, too close to it.
gave them the opportunity to react to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you learn. You know, you live and you learn through it.
Right. Hopefully without getting stabbed by a needle.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
That would have sucked.
Yeah,
That really would have sucked.
Yeah, especially if it had any of them things on it.
You know, we had to be, you always had to be careful searching people, searching cars. You never want to stick your hand on there and get, you know, pricked by it. It happened. It happened, not to me, but it's happened to people. And back in days of like AIDS and all that, guess what? You were going to get tested forever.
Right.
You know, they were going to always be tested forever. You know, and the guy I worked with, I show up on a scene one night and he's giving a guy mouth to mouth with no mask, no nothing. And, you know, I'm like, John, I mean, his brain is over there. This dude's dead. He got shot in the head. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing, man? Turns out that dude had AIDS, you know, which they weren't allowed to tell you then, but it was a family member that went and said, yeah, man, you better go get tested. He was sick, you know. And this poor guy had to go get again.
Did you know anybody that actually contracted something that way?
No. You know, met plenty, you know, through your travels, you meet plenty of people with AIDS.
Right.
You know.
Sure.
But
and it's not like I feel like it's way more medicated now than it was.
well,
back then.
now you can get. I don't think it's going to kill you.
Right.
And I think you can.
I mean,
you
Magic
can get,
Johnson's still alive. He's
yeah,
had
you
30
can get
years.
treated to the point where it doesn't even show up
Right.
as you having it.
Right.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means for transmission or anything.
Me neither. I just know
But-
that in the 80s it was something that killed people in 9 or 10 months, right? Didn't it
Oh
kill
yeah,
people quickly?
It
Like
killed
was-
people. Well, because first of all, a lot of them were drug addicts.
Right.
They were unhealthy to begin with. They probably had other diseases going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, it would kill them quickly. You know.
I watched a crazy movie on something probably 2 years ago, and it was about the porn industry.
Mm-hmm.
But it was around that time when that stuff started happening, when people started making videos, AIDS became a thing. Yeah, it was really interesting, you know, to see how hardcore it was back then.
Yeah.
Compared to now. I don't think it's near that. Which I guess that's, you know, evolution in sciences and stuff, right? Like technology and medicine definitely makes people live longer now, because something like that would have killed half the world back in the day, you know?
Yeah, I mean that was AIDS was a disease, like you got it through needles or you got it through, you know, different sexual practices and stuff. If you avoided needles and then avoided the sex part of it, you wouldn't get it.
Right.
You were not.
You could, like they said,
unless,
you could, like, drink spit. From
unless
somebody.
by accident, you know, you got covered in blood, or, you know, something like that.
Right.
You know, but I mean, I remember we did a warrant on a place in D.C. years ago.
And it's most of a homosexual thing too, right? Like,
Yeah.
I thought it was too.
It had to do with
some kind of breaking of the skin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, any sexual contact where skin is going to get broken, there's an exchange of blood or saliva or something.
Right.
That's you contract it.
Right. I can't remember where I learned that from, but that was an interesting fact that popped up somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, we would do warrants, and this is when you had a house full of people all dying from AIDS. They're selling drugs out of it. And where's a great place to hide your drugs? Right underneath the dying AIDS guy. So we'd have to go in there and like roll in these people, and they're just literally melting in there. It was horrible, man. But that's, drug dealers. They do, they didn't care. So, they would hide their drugs underneath the dying guy.
Yeah.
That was messed up, man. I remember sitting going, have a little respect, man. Come on. Hide in the wall or something.
It's like, doesn't it make you wonder, like, how are you raised to even think that things like that are just normal or not that you, I don't know.
Yeah. I had a lot of dealings with drug dealers, whether it was being undercover or being on the street or whatever. And I never viewed drug dealers in and of themselves as being bad people, necessarily. I judge you by your actions. Just the fact that you sling some dope doesn't, to me, never made you. You're in the position you're in. Now, if you hurt other people, if you're trying to give it to little kids, stuff like that, well, then you're a piece of crap. But I knew a lot of guys, man.
I mean, and for a dealer that's dealing to people that are choosing to get high, they are seeking him out to get high, right?
Yeah.
He's not going and saying, here, you need to use this.
Yeah.
I mean, they're seeking him out. So, yeah, as long as it's not children and things like that. That's a fine line, though, isn't it? Because
it is.
It's like, a fentanyl dealer is going to be selling it, but it might take you out the next time you get it.
They would say the same thing about the heroin dealers.
Yeah,
you're dealing death to people, man. You're dealing something that is extremely addictive, that leads only one way, man. So yeah, does that make you a bad person for dealing it? Yeah, maybe.
Destroying lives is definitely a thing, right?
But the other argument is it's your body and you have a right to do what you want.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, right?
Yeah. If you want to stick a needle in your arm, go right ahead. But there's a certain coldness in that attitude.
Sure. Well, and then to be able to watch that person just go from one thing to another over a period of time and just degrade in front of your eyes as you make money from it.
Yeah.
That's
kind of immoral, man.
Yeah,
it
is.
I
mean, I help my friends out. I never made money selling things like that because I was a user. But of course, my buddy wanted some and he was sick. Hell, he looked better once I gave it to him because now he wasn't sick. But in the long run, I wasn't helping him.
No.
Wasn't helping none of us.
No. But, you got to want the help.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I have a relative who got addicted to heroin for a while. And voluntarily went into treatment. Has been sober for like 30 years. Became very active in the NA community. Then again, I have a cousin who died of it. So it's everywhere, man.
It is, man. And it doesn't matter which race, creed, color, gender, age you are, dude. It can get you.
Yeah.
And addiction is one thing. Heroin addiction is one thing. Meth addiction is one thing. All they're different things. But addiction by itself is there everywhere. It's literally in the air. It's literally in the water. You can get it from anything. People are addicted to coffee. People are addicted to telephones. Some of those are your smaller addictions that really destroy lives. But it's still something that motivates you to do something, which is what an addiction is.
Yeah. I'm a nicotine addict.
Right. Bro, I've been quitting now for like fucking 6 or 8 weeks, man. And I want a cigarette so bad.
Oh, man, I shouldn't have smoked in front of you.
No, it's okay. I mean, if I can't deal with it like that, like for drugs, for example, I never thought I'd really want to be around people doing Xanax and stuff like that just because I don't like to see them high. Right. But the cigarettes don't bother me. Like my old lady smokes, you know what I'm saying? And that's probably going to be harder than anything.
Right.
But as far as you guys or anybody, especially if it's not a kind of cigarette that I want. Because if you're smoking a Marlboro Light, I want no parts of it.
Oh, good.
I wouldn't have wanted no parts of it when I was smoking, so it doesn't bother me at all. But yeah, man, it's tough, dude, because 30 years of smoking cigarettes, you know? That's a long time. That's a lot of, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of a lot of leaning on cigarettes, isn't it?
Oh, hell yeah. Man.
It's a lot of leaning there. Now I just kind of want to chill out and lean for a minute, and I can.
Hell yeah. I mean, I got it to the point, like, I don't smoke when I'm at work anymore. I do have nicotine lozenges and stuff, but I don't bring cigarettes to work with me. I've quit a few times over the years.
Right, and I think limiting is kind of part of quitting, isn't it? Once you learn how to limit, then you can learn how to quit.
I just have no desire to quit, man.
Right.
You know?
I'm going to tell you what made me quit, man. We just lost a guy to
what is the lung thing? OPZ? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was dying. Great guy, come around all the time. Really liked him. Name was
Mm-hmm.
Bob, man. We went over to get him for lunch. He had just retired, Scott. He had just retired, worked his whole life. Just retired.
Mm-hmm.
Been retired 2 weeks. let's take you to lunch. We're gonna go over to get him lunch. He comes out. He gets in the back of the car, and he's like, I don't think I can go. And he had to get back in the house, bro. He couldn't even go to lunch for us. He died a month later. I knew when he got out of the car that day that he wasn't going to last.
Yeah, that's COPD,
month.
right?
Yeah.
That's what it's COPD. Yeah.
And that hit me hard for like 2 hours. You know, we went to lunch and I just couldn't stop thinking about how limited he was after working his whole life to be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I quit, man.
It's still like, you know, I guess you bargain with yourself. And you're like, oh, well, I'm going to have a few. I don't smoke nearly like what I used to, but I'm going to have a few. I don't know if that helps, doesn't help or not. And I think I'm getting fat enough without quitting, you know, and I know what's going to happen if I do quit, you know, and I have a, if you have a minute, I'll tell you why I still smoke, and I'm a defiant smoker.
Fucking go for it.
Okay. About 20 years ago, I got into a little off-duty incident in which nobody got hurt. Nobody, you know, but, however, gunfire was, basically I got drunk and shot my closet floor, right? My job found out about it. My future ex-wife was very upset that happened. And it was kind of an incident.
Okay.
So they took my gun, they took my badge, and they sent me to the job psychiatrist. And she talks to me for a while. She looks at my records and my work I've done, the incidents I've been on. She goes, well, you have this undiagnosed PTSD. I'm like, whatever. Everyone's got PTSD, man. She goes, listen, if you want to save your job, I recommend you go away for 28 days to alcohol treatment. You know, I was like, all right, whatever. I wanted to get the hell away from home anyway.
Right.
I was like, so I went to this place in Pennsylvania. They came and picked me up. The guy picked me up was an absolute lunatic, and he goes, hey, man, are you drunk? I was like, no. He goes, you want to stop at the liquor store? He goes, this is your last hurrah. I was like, dude, I haven't had a drink in 2 weeks. Since the night of that incident.
Right.
I haven't had a drink in 2 weeks. Right? So he's like, well, then what are you going for? So, because the job said I got to go, right? So I go up, I do my time, and I realized that what a kind of scam it is, man. Because I was stone sober. I walk in there, and I had not had a cigarette in like 4 or 5 years, but I had nicotine gum, right? And I get there, they go through my bags and everything, and they go, you can't have this. I said, why not? It's nicotine gum. And they go, no, it's medicine. You can't have that. But you can go around the corner and buy a carton of cigarettes at our little shop. I was like, really?
At their shop where they made money.
Yeah. They took my nicotine gum, put me back on cigarettes. So then from there I was calling my wife saying, hey, send me a couple cartons, you know, like I'm not buying from these thieves.
Right.
You know, and they the first night they go, you need to go to detox. I was like, why? I'm not on anything. Well, that's our rules. You have to go to detox. So I got to spend all night watching these doctors, other people like detoxing off whatever pills and drugs they were on. It was a goddamn nightmare when you're sober.
Sick, bro.
So they come in, hey, you able to sleep? I'm like, how in the hell am I supposed to sleep with this?
Right.
They go, do you want a barbiturate to help you sleep?
Wow.
I thought this place was about not doing that.
What do you
shit,
mean? I haven't
So anyway, they put me back on cigarettes. They wanted to keep me. It was your basic 12-step thing, you know. And I did it. I did what I had to do.
Right, saved the job.
And the guy comes in, and my counselor, who was like 23 years old, he comes in, he goes, we don't think you're responding to the treatment. We're going to keep you another week. What? I was like, look, dude, I know you probably called my insurance company. And he said, yeah, keep me another week. He said, I'm leaving. And I don't care if it's AMA, against medical advice. I'm leaving tomorrow morning, period. Right. End of story, right? And next morning he comes in at breakfast. He goes, hey, Scott, congratulations.
Right.
Because they don't want people leaving AMA.
Right.
You know?
It ain't going to work.
And then, I ran a place that had a lot of cops and firemen and doctors in it, but then there was a lot of locals too. And I had a roommate for a while, and he was on like public assistance, and he was a stone cold alcoholic. And he was really upset one day, and because they were kicking him out. because he did his 2 weeks. That's all they're willing to pay for. Meanwhile, there have been some cops in there for months.
Right.
You know, because we were
paid.
Well, and we were there like on 9/11 money, apparently.
Oh, okay.
They tied a lot of that to 9/11. 9/11 had nothing to do with it for me.
Right.
You know, or for most of the other people in there. But some of them. But they were paying for this stuff. So there's unlimited money, man. So so these people, my job, I wasn't going to lose my job. If they said, oh, he left against medical advice, I did what I said I was going to do. I wanted to get 28 days.
Right. And you tried to make me use when I was there.
Yeah. And you know, and I heard a term recently on another, I was watching some podcast, and, you know, they say, oh, you're an alcoholic. And because I'm not an alcoholic, I'm a problem drinker. I could go a month without a drink. I can go 2 months. I had a bar in my basement. I could walk past it, not even think about taking a drink ever. When I did get my hands on a bottle, things could get a little dicey sometimes. Not always. I'm usually a happy drunk. But sometimes, no. You know, I have my moments, and that was one of those moments.
Right.
So, you know, I like a Jack and Coke like anyone else now. Like, the older I got, it's really, like, slowed down a lot. Good.
Right.
Keeps me out of trouble. Yeah. Well, I hate hangovers. That's what it boiled down to.
I was never much of a drinker, too.
Yeah.
It would destroy me for the next day.
I drank a lot. I'm not going to lie, man. I drank from my time I was a teenager. For a long time, I drank a lot. Because I think we were, like, came up binge drinking. Like I went down this whole goddamn bottle. Because if I'm not passed out by the end of the night, if I'm not blacked out, I failed. Right. Then you hit your late 20s or 30s. It's like, I can't do this anymore. And now, I kept up. But eventually, in the last 10 years or so, I'm like, I'll have a few at dinner.
Right.
You know, or whatever.
Yeah, I'm like a one beer in the evening guy, maybe two.
Yeah. I'll sit there. Well, I calculated, okay? One can of Coke will make 3 Jack and Cokes. So that's it. I'll make 3. And I'll sit there and you know, I'll sip on a drink for an hour or two, man. Never enough to even really catch a buzz.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's different. I think that's kind of the way, you know, drinking should be. Instead of...
Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Right, that's how you're supposed to use it, is a little bit, just kind of knock the edge off and maybe stay there. And instead of, you know... my grandfather was an alcoholic, drank his whole life. Yeah. You know, puking every morning, drunk every night, every day. Yeah, at the liquor store like this at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
To get that first sip.
I've known a lot of guys like that.
Yeah, man. Alcohol's terrible for you. It's just so bad for your body.
It is.
It's so terrible for your body.
It is. But, you know, it's also what they call a social lubricant, you know.
Inhibitions go out the door.
I've always had, you know, my whole life, people are like, why are you so quiet, man? Why, you know, like, because I'm fine with this. You put me in a room of people, I'm like, I tend to shut down a little bit. But if I get a few on me, then I'm a little more social, you know what I mean?
It's kind of where it starts, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you sit there and you're feeling awkward and you loosen up with a couple of drinks, and the next time, loosened up with a couple of drinks. Next time, more drinks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And it becomes part of it. A lot of people do that, man.
Yeah. And then it gets out of hand. You know, but I didn't realize. Well, one thing I will thank my ex-wife for. So she lived in Maryland. I lived in New York. We met in training. And I ended up moving to Maryland because of her, transferring to the D.C. office. If that hadn't happened, I would have ended up like the most stone-cold alcoholic you ever saw. Me and my partner would, after we went to a bar, the same bar, every day after work, and sat there and drank until that place closed. And we did it every day. And to the point where on our days off, he'd be like, hey, man, meet me at Danny's.
Right.
And we go there, and it was getting bad. It was, and had I not been pulled out of that atmosphere, I mean, Mikey ended up shooting himself, you know, and, yeah. So, yeah, I'll thank her for that. She got me away from that, you know. Having kids, that changes it, too, you know. So.
For sure. Well, yeah, man. That's about it then, huh?
All right.
Yeah, sound good. You got anything else you wanted to talk about? I mean, you got no socials or anything for me to drop, tell anybody to go follow you.
Yeah, no, I wish I had something to sell, but no.
Right.
No, look for Foreign Company, look for Rebel Soul, right?
There you go.
And,
yeah, man, I appreciate you coming out and making the time.
Yeah, that was awesome,
good.
man.
It's a great podcast. I appreciate talking to you. It definitely gives us a different life, because I think a lot of us look at cops, especially when we're in that mindset, and it's like you're just the enemy. Like I said earlier, your job's to catch us, my job's to get away.
Yeah.
But
at the end of the day, y'all are people too. You know what I'm saying? You got
Well,
a job, you got a life to go home to, and you're just trying not to die out there on the streets.
I always think you can't be monolithic in your thinking about any group. Like I've known cops who come from, they're very diverse in their thought. Police. Like most people would picture, the policeman, he's a conservative, he's this, he's that, and not all of them are like that. I know cops who are very liberal, cops that are sort of more libertarianish. You know, that's probably kind of where I fall, maybe. You know, guys who are laid back, guys who aren't. Cops have their pet peeves. I hate drug guys, I hate DUIs, I hate this, and that's who I'm going after. And they're not monolithic in their thinking, right? And yes, some of them are the schoolyard bully. Some of them are people who got that job just because they want to lord over other people, or they want to be tough to other people and stuff like that. You know, and hopefully somewhere along the way they learn humility. I saw some of them did, some of them never did. You know,
that's definitely an assumption among the inmates, if you will.
Yeah.
I took your lunch money, bitch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I used to take your lunch money in school. That's why you got this job.
Yeah. Yeah. And that sometimes that's true. I don't think that's normal. I don't think
it's not everybody.
I think a lot of people I knew, especially because I worked for that, like, U.S. Park Police. We weren't like a city police department or state. A lot of people just backed into it, man. A lot of people were like, you know, it looked like a cool job. You know? Not the intensity of maybe an NYPD or something, you know, but it looked cool. You know, I knew people that, hey, I always wanted to ride a horse for a living. You know, Park Police has got this big horse-mounted unit, and you get to ride around downtown. And spend my life, you know, riding a horse. Right. I know plenty of people on a horse-mounted they took the job for that.
No shit.
You know, I know other guys who, like, they wanted to ride a motorcycle. We have a big motor unit. You know, I want to ride a Harley my whole life. That's what they did. You know. So people come to it from a lot of different ways. You know. I mean, I had plenty of friends who went to NYPD, and they're all very different people. They didn't think the same way. They didn't act the same way, you know.
I think a lot of it is an assumption that your grandfather was a cop, your mother, your father, your brothers, everybody in your family is a cop or a fireman or something, and it's kind of like it was instilled in you. That's a breed.
Well,
of like people that, I don't know, I just feel like it's easy for us to vilify that person when you're a criminal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Versus somebody that plays guitar and, you know what I mean, got into it to ride a horse or whatever. It's like you didn't get into it because you wanted to make a difference or lock up criminals or because your mother was killed by a DUI and you wanted to stop drunk drivers. Like, you didn't have none of those reasons that some of us feel like it is.
Yeah. Man, it just looked like a cool job. Like I said at the beginning, I had ulterior motives. I had these other visions of not being there forever and doing using that as a jumping board to something else, and it turned out that didn't work out, right? You know, but yeah, everyone comes to it for different reasons, from different angles, and the whole thing about it's a family tradition. Well, you know why it's a family tradition, in my opinion? So in New York, we call it having a rabbi. Okay, if your uncle was a deputy commander or something, you got someone who's going to take care of you on that job. You know, like fire department, right?
Make it easier,
right? Fire department. Right, there's a lot of families of firefighters, right, and it's because they all know everybody, man. They're like, oh, you know, they can kind of grease the wheels for you. They can look out for you. They can get you that good assignment, and you're familiar with it. When you're a kid who grew up and your dad's a firefighter, that's what you know,
right?
You know, and that's
my dad was a carpenter. That's the first thing I started doing, building stuff.
See, like my dad was a car guy, and I am not a car guy at all. I was attracted to music. I've been doing music my whole life, you know, and...
He didn't like music at all, or...?
He wasn't a musician.
Right.
He would listen to music, you know. I would drive around with him when I was a little kid, and he'd be listening to that early 70s country and stuff like that. So they got me, like, I like all that stuff, you know. He'd be listening to Frank Sinatra on Sunday mornings, you know, stuff like that. But no, he was not necessarily... Him and my mother were not, they were not into music so much, you know. But that's because I'm adopted, so I came from a different
set of genetics.
Yeah, who I learned who they were about 10 years ago. And my biological father played the guitar, of all weird things. Not professionally, but he was a guitar player.
Wow,
and I thought that was wild, man, because he's dead, but my biological mother's still alive. And I talked to her a bit, and she's like, yeah, I saw him playing in that band, and he wrote his own songs and everything. I'm like, that's wild, man. I got a lot. I share more traits with them than I do the family I grew up in. Very much more.
That is so crazy how it's built in your genes like that, right?
Yeah.
I remember coming home from prison and my son was about 11. And he was outside bitching about something, cussing about something I had done, and it was me.
Yeah.
It was fucking me.
Oh, yeah,
dude.
yeah. Well,
it was just like me when I was his age, and I was amazed because I hadn't been around for 6 years. You didn't learn that from me.
It's in the blood.
Right, it's just there.
Yeah. No, it's the whole thing. Like I've always been like a history buff, and I belong to this historical society. I do their genealogical work, and I do their history research and stuff. And I was like, I can never do that for myself, right? And until I was able to. And I went crazy with that, man. I did all the genealogy and all that crazy crap. And what helped was I come from a long line of people who were into that. You know, I found a book that was written by like some great-great-great-grandma about our family back in England and all that.
Wow.
And my grandfather, it was he has binders and binders of family history from, he would go, he was from Kentucky. And he would go back. He lived in Indiana. He'd go back to Kentucky after he retired. And he would just talk to people, man. He'd write down all this family history, family lore, and everything. So I come from a long line of that. So it's just, I'm like, wow, this is wild, man. Right. It's all in the blood, And
yeah, that's crazy, isn't
it? So yeah. And it's weird. I grew up in New York City. I'm the product of people from Kentucky and Alabama and upstate New York. So
right.
Yeah, very different. Very, very different.
Crazy the people you meet, man. I've met so many people doing this. So many different backgrounds and belief systems. And just it's amazing to me sometimes. I don't know. I think our worlds are small.
Yeah.
Our worlds are small. The internet has opened that up, but I don't think we fully understand all the stuff that we put our eyes on daily,
Oh, yeah. No doubt. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess as we get older, I don't know. I've started looking at things differently.
You do.
Just everything in life. Reasons for this, reasons for that. Is there a reason for it?
Right.
How do you do this? How do you do that?
Right.
Why does this person do that? Yeah, it's definitely a lot to think about.
You can get so deep in the weeds with that kind of stuff, man.
You can drive yourself crazy with it, or you can just kind of give yourself an opinion. I think one of the things I've been working on the most is, why do I believe some of the things I believe? Like sometimes somebody will say something and I'll get defensive, and then I'm challenging myself, like, why am I defensive? Why do I believe that so much? Is that valid? Is it realistic?
Right.
Does it make sense? Is it just me being stupid?
Yeah. Well, it shows that you think.
Right.
Not a lot of people are capable of thinking, I think, anymore, man. They just kind of go through life like a drone, and they don't really give it a second thought, man. When you think anything, any aspect of life you think about, I get trapped in that. And it sends me to some dark places, man, sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes simplicity is what's best,
yes.
Right? Yeah, just let it be simple and let it flow.
Yeah, I like to read a lot of like Stoic stuff, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, things like that. And,
so that's kind of where my brain's going with when we talked about, like, I'm not doing things. Like, I'm not watching so much content. I'm trying not to digest or intake crap.
Right.
You know what I mean? I want to intake things that are either going to benefit me to grow my life or grow my channel or help my family, whatever, right? But I've been thinking about some of those things because some of the people that I'm watching that is kind of putting me in that direction talks about those same books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think at this point in my life right now, I can sit down and read a fucking book and pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's going too fast in here. I'm trying to slow that down so that I would actually be able to do that. I know I couldn't because I can't watch a fucking video without thinking about something else.
Right. No, I got it. But if you were to read that stuff, it might send you off.
Right.
Really, like a lot of Marcus Aurelius, a lot of Stoicism. It's about the, grant me the wisdom, the Serenity Prayer.
Right.
He wrote that stuff 2,000 years ago about, I can't change this.
Right.
Why am I going to worry about it?
Mm-hmm.
I can't change this. So don't worry about it. Don't let it ruin your day.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about yesterday. You can't change history, right? And let me try to fix the things I can fix. Let me recognize what the difference is, And, one of the other ones wrote, is it endurable? Then endure it, which means, shut up and just endure it. You know,
Right.
can you do it? And there's a lot of, you might be okay reading a relish because it's snippets. You can read like this one day, read that. It's not a long, you know,
Right,
it's
okay.
just a little, he wrote down his thoughts,
Right.
his ideas about life and stuff like that. And I think, and so did some of the other Stoic writers. And you know, at the same time, then you realize he was an emperor of Rome, Aurelius, and he raised an absolute monster who replaced him. So he wasn't much of a dad. He wasn't much of a dad, I guess, but he was a great philosopher.
Right.
But yeah, I find that it's hard. It's a hard philosophy to like live by because you get caught up in your own crap, you know. And I haven't been living that philosophy lately, but I got to get back to it. You know what I need, man? I need the outdoors.
Right.
I don't get out there enough. But yeah.
Well, let's take a walk. I got outdoors everywhere around us right now, bro. I got a nice fucking thing out here. Look out here. I know you're ready for a cigarette.
Yeah, man.
So I'll go and get you one of them and take a look around or something. Again, I appreciate you coming, making
Sure,
the time,
man.
dude. This is going to be
Sure.
awesome. I'll let you know when it comes out.
Awesome. Sounds
We'll
good.
get it edited as soon as possible.
Cool, man.
So drop a comment. Let Scott know what y'all think, man. I hope this gave y'all a little different look than just me talking to the damn camera all the time. But yeah, I've had everybody from abuse victims to, you know, prisoners. And so yeah, man, it's cool. Something different.
Awesome.
Sweet. Till next time, don't sweat the petty things. Pet the sweaty things.